Mike back again, and I've been doing these interviews for a little while now. We've started releasing them. As I record this, we've got 4 or 5 out, and I just continue to be blown away. Every time I do one, I get exactly what I need out of it. And what I want for you, my intention for you, is just to come away with some inspiration, some hope, the next step that you need to take to be able to move forward as we talk about the impact of emotional health on your business. And I'm excited to have with me today from StephanieCallahan.com, Stephanie Callahan.
Hi, it's good to be here.
Oh, did I come to you too fast? Are we ready to go? So, Stephanie, you are a coach. And
Right.
from looking at your website, it sounds like you coach other coaches primarily. Is that the case?
Coaches, authors, speakers, holistic health professionals, people that are purpose driven and that are actually, I like to call the world changers, even if they don't see themselves as a world changer.
So this is what do you see as we get started here? A lot of the people that I talk to are small business owners, brick and mortar business owners, people who are online business. Like it's all kind of the same. We're trying to build our businesses. We're trying to connect with our audience. We're trying to get our message out there.
Right.
What is it that people come to you with, repeatedly? I mean, we tend to draw people to ourselves that are like us, right? So what is it that who's your typical client?
My typical client is somebody that is just amazingly brilliant at what they do. And they're usually the people that are the really hard workers, those people that are going and going and going. And unfortunately, what's happened to them is they've gone so much that they've created kind of like a hamster in a hamster wheel where they're continually taking action, but that action is no longer taking their business to the same degree of change that they're looking for. Maybe they've had really great success in the past, but they've hit some kind of plateau in their business. And that plateau can show up in a few different ways. It could show up in health problems, it can show up with relationship issues, or it could just plain and simple show up with their business plateauing out. And they come to me, number one, to get unstuck, to get clear and clarity on where they need to go next. And we do that working at the intersection of heart and head, because I've found that people typically when they've hit that type of plateau have some things going on between their two ears, some mindset stuff that we can work on, and then once we do that, we get the right business systems and strategy in place to let them move forward with their business and really grow.
So that is perfect because what I try to focus on in this show is the importance of emotional health in entrepreneurship. And
Right.
a lot of times I'll end up focusing really on the intersection between emotional trauma and entrepreneurship because I think it introduces a lot of unique challenges and that if we have a history of abuse or bullying or substance abuse or divorce or something like that, that it can teach us not to believe in ourselves. And if we question that judgment, it really sets us up for some difficulty in building our business. And what I loved in hearing you talk through who you work with was having, read your bio where you talk about your transition.
Hmm.
I hear again, we coach what we need to learn.
Right, right. When I heard about your show, that's one of the reasons I was excited to come on, because I see some alignment there for sure.
Awesome. So tell us about that journey for you. I know you kind of outline it on your about page and you talk about it on other podcasts. Just give us a broad overview so people who haven't heard your story before kind of know where we're starting here.
Sure, sure. I'd be happy to. Before I started Calahan Solutions, which is the name of my business, I had worked in corporate America, and I had worked my way up in the organization really rather quickly, probably too quickly in hindsight, and I got really addicted to work. And the short part of that story is this: stuff got really toxic there, and I decided to leave. I took a leap of faith. My husband and I both left our jobs, and we moved 2.5 hours south. He got a new job, and I started my business, and we had a toddler in tow. So that's a lot of upheaval in and of itself. But then what ultimately occurred is I was building a new business, had all these other things going on, and I hadn't cured my addiction to work, my addiction to being busy. And so while I had a lot of clients and my business was going really fantastic, and even lots of different awards from the community and in my industry, there was one thing that was really lacking that I didn't recognize, and that was me taking care of me. And it all kind of came to a head in 2009 when I got really, really sick. So sick that I was told I probably wouldn't see 2010. And I got to the point where I really wasn't helping anybody. Um, my my coaching clients went down to a bare minimum. There was very little I could do energy wise. Just to give you an example, I'd walk out to my mailbox, and we just have a standard size driveway. It's not, miles long or anything like that. And I'd have to sit on the curb for about 20 minutes or so before I had enough energy to come back into the house. So as you can imagine, doing things like face-to-face networking or speaking on the stage, all those things that I had done to grow my business and get it to the point where it was at, I couldn't do those things anymore. And I ultimately ended up having to quit everything for almost a year and a half, 2 years, to be able to get my health back in alignment.
Was that stress related, or did you know what that was at the time? What was going on there?
There were a number of different things that kind of pooled together to make my particular medical situation happen. Ultimately, what caused the energy issues is that my adrenal system stopped functioning altogether. And your adrenal gland is this really teeny tiny gland that creates the baseline chemicals that the rest of your body needs to make hormones. So my thyroid couldn't do what it needed to do, my ovaries couldn't do what they needed to do, and so on. So I was kind of shutting down from the inside out. Now, your adrenals can be taxed for a lot of different reasons. They can be taxed because of the food that you eat. They can be taxed because of stress, just regular everyday stress. They can be taxed because of environmental stress. I had all those things going on because I never really healed from the toxic environment I had in the corporate space. I just kind of created my own version of it. And so I was doing everything that I loved with my business, but I still wasn't taking care of me. I didn't sleep a whole lot. I over exercised, if you can believe that. And I also found out that I had a tremendous number of food allergies that I didn't know I had. So when I would eat turkey and lettuce and spinach and tomatoes and food like that, it was actually food that my body didn't interpret as nutrition. And so I also ended up malnourished, even though I was eating what I thought was healthy food. So fortunately, in 2009, I was able to find a holistic healthcare practitioner who was able to help me figure all that out and put all the what I call complex mess together and get a plan of action so that I could reclaim my life. As a result, I've ended up, I used to have migraines that put me to the hospital multiple times a month. I used to have asthma attacks that emergency inhalers couldn't cure. I had the adrenal system that had shut down. All those things are taken care of now because I've shifted how I live, how I work, and how I eat.
And it sounds like what you're saying is what was at the center of all of this was this addiction to work and stress and achievement that was
Right.
driving the behavior and diet and over exercising and pushing yourself too hard that kind of created the physical situation.
Exactly. Exactly. One of the biggest things that I did when my adrenals stopped is I stopped. Now, I didn't have a choice. And that's one of the things that I like working with my clients on is to help them realize it's your business. And that doesn't matter if it's a brick and mortar, if it's a digital business, if it's a virtual business, it's your business. And there are thousands of business models that can work for different people. And so what I didn't acknowledge early on that I definitely do now is picking a business model that really is in alignment with who I am, what I do, and what my values are. All of my values, not just my business values, but my spiritual values, my personal values, my health values, all of them all combined so that everything can work in harmony.
So, I mean, here's a case where you're kind of getting smacked in the face with the results of these beliefs to the
Right,
point that you can't continue living even, right? But we
right, right.
a lot of people, even if they don't manifest it that extremely, will still have a business that they're unhappy with and still feel like they're not getting the results and still feel like they're not getting fulfilled and they're not happy and they're frustrated by their business. What can they take away from your experience to kind of make sense of the situation that they're in?
I love that question, and I hope that in sharing this story, it actually prevents some people from ending up in the extreme situation that I did, because I had the signs that I was heading in that direction for a while, and I kind of blew them off a little bit and just said, "Oh, some other time I'll take care of myself." I I think one of the best things that you can do is start by being really clear with yourself on what do you want your ideal day to be. And I know that sounds kind of simplistic, but a lot of people start their business after having worked in some kind of corporate environment or some kind of other person's business environment situation. And so they kind of mold themselves into whatever pattern that they were familiar with in the past. But the reality is, if you take into consideration what are your top energy times of day, when are you the most creative, when are you the most analytical, and really look at that, and then when do you want to work? Now, I'm not one of those people that says that if you dream it, you believe it, and your business will just come true. What I'm saying is be really honest with yourself about when you want to work, and then figure out a way and figure out a business plan around that. So let me give you an example. I'm not a morning person at all. And it's much easier for me to stay up till 4 in the morning than it does to get up at 4 in the morning. And so when in the past I had meetings at 8 a.m. or 9 a.m., I wasn't really at my best. And I was kind of resentful. Uh, Maybe unrealistically so, but still the resentment was there for when I was working. When I stepped back and decided when do I really want to work and when am I going to be my most effective, I realized that there were a number of things I could do in the morning that would be effective for my health, for my life, and for my business, but that my meetings in general don't start until 10 a.m. in the morning. And that's really different from the 8 to 5 or 9 to 5 rules that you would hear in a regular space of business, but it works really well for me, and I've adjusted my schedule so that my clients get the absolute best of me when they need it, and I can still be taking care of myself. So the first step would be just define your ideal day. What does that look like? In some instances, depending on the type of business you have, you may not be able to get exactly to your ideal day, but by defining it, you can get a lot closer because you're actually taking the time to think about it.
And I totally agree with you. I think that's great advice. But you had to go through a lot of healing to get to that point, to come to
Yeah,
that conclusion. I mean,
yeah.
could you have gone back to yourself in 2007 or 2008 and say, hey, why don't you just not take any meetings before 10 a.m.?
No. It, I think everything happens for a reason. And I've had a lot of people ask me, Stephanie, if you had to do it again, would you go through that, that situation that you went through? It was pretty scary for your family. It was kind of scary for you. And I'm coming out on the other end much more wise than when I started. I had people that told me to slow down for years. And I didn't listen. It actually took something that made me slow down and made me quit. Um, I think had I had someone with a similar story, I probably would have listened a little better. Um, so hopefully this is motivating to people. One thing that I suggest you do to try, rather than going by my start at 10 a.m., because that may not be the right choice for you. Some people are morning people and they should start at 4 a.m. in the morning, and it works fantastic for them. If you're on the West Coast and you're a morning person, you could target people on the East Coast, and your timing would be really great because they're so far ahead of you. There's creative ways that you can make your perfect time work for you. But there's this test that I use with myself and my clients, and I call it the resentment test. And it's really very simple. You get into a quiet place and you think about a decision that you're wanting to make and what that decision is, or what you think that decision needs to be. And then you just ask yourself honestly, what kind of resentment do I have, or how do I feel about actually making this decision happen? And if you feel any kind of sickness in your stomach or tightness in your neck or any kind of negative feeling, that's your body's way, that's your subconscious way of telling you this isn't quite right. And so then you keep tweaking until whatever decision you have makes you feel really empowered on the inside, because that's the decision that's going to take you the farthest and the fastest.
I think that's another great tip. And it kind of highlights also the trick of, in your case, being addicted to work, which is that 10 years ago, it served you to be addicted to work. It helped you get ahead in a corporate environment. And then the other thing it does is it kind of mutes that ability to pay attention to what your body is telling you so that you can keep it going and keep pushing forward, even though your body is trying to tell you subtly at first and then much more loudly, slow down, you have to take care of yourself. So, you know, how did you started to recognize it because you really, like we talked about, hit a wall with your health? Looking, how do we want to approach this? So you come away saying, I was a workaholic, I was a perfectionist, and I felt like I needed to prove my worth. This is from your about page on your website. These things are conclusions, I think, after the fact. How did you, looking back, how did you experience that? What are some of the flags that people can look for to say, like, I'm not headed in the right direction? Yeah, because I talk to people all the time who will say, my business isn't going the way I want, and I'm frustrated and I'm disappointed, and maybe I struggle with anxiety and fear and depression, but they don't tie it all together. They just think, well, this is how life is. So how can you look back and help them start to make sense of that now? Is that a
Yeah,
good question?
so sure, all questions are good questions. So the first thing that I would encourage anybody that came to me that said, Stephanie, my business just isn't going well, is to stop and get really clear on what's not going well. Because not well for you is going to look really different than not well for me. Does that mean that your sales aren't good? Does that mean that your profits aren't good? You could have fantastic sales and your profits are horrible. Does that mean that you don't have enough time to yourself? Does that mean you have all kinds of employee problems? I mean, your business not going well is too generic. So start by just taking a pad of paper and a pen and writing down everything that you don't like about your business. And then reverse that and write down what you want instead. Because what I've found is there's a lot of business owners that don't know what they want. Therefore, they're stuck in being able to move forward. So that would be step number one. Now, when we start talking about, because you asked me a couple different questions. You asked about what are the symptoms too. So there's something that I like to call visibility blocks for businesses. And that's where you may be working really hard, but there's things going on under the surface that are keeping you from being as visible as you could be within your business. And symptoms of visibility blocks are things like you procrastinate on projects. The reverse of that is that you're a perfectionist on projects. Now, I want to pause for a minute and talk about that perfectionism thing, because there's a lot of people that would say, Stephanie, what's wrong with being a perfectionist? I'm going to tell you that if you don't take stuff to market, you can't sell and you can't make money, which is why you're in business. And yes, you should absolutely deliver with excellence, but perfectionism is usually a sign that you're somehow have something going on in the background that's keeping you from taking something to market. And that's why I call it a visibility block. It can actually stifle you more than procrastination can. There's other visibility blocks too, of just putting things off and saying, oh, when I lose 10 pounds, I'll do this interview with Mike, right? I mean, we're on video now, and I had to agree to be on video to do those things. It could be that things that were going really, really well in your business all of a sudden just stall. And you're not exactly sure why there's a stall, but you recognize that there is one. It could be that you're just plain tired of going all the time, and there has to be a better way. It could be that your business is going well, but that you're supposed to be playing a bigger game than you are, and you're not exactly sure how to do that. All those are signs that it's time to switch things up a little bit.
Yeah, awesome. And so they're easily able to get through 8 or 9 or 10 kind of red flags that people could look out for. If you experience, if you feel like you're experiencing this in your business, that's a sign, is what you're saying.
Right.
So what is it a sign of? What's behind that? When you work with people, what do these things typically lead to?
You know, so that goes back to the whole concept that I say of working at the intersection of head and heart. So what I've found is that business owners typically, on the scale of head and heart, they're usually too heavy in one direction or the other. So the head part is the analytical stuff, the tactical stuff. Maybe they've taken slews and slews and slews of courses, and they have so much of that going on that they're having troubles implementing it because they can't pick what actually is working for them. And so they've got all the education they need, but now they need somebody to help them figure out how to pick the right elements for who they are and their business model and actually get them in alignment. That's the kind of the head side. The heart side is the more internal mindset piece of it, where a lot of times there's things going on. People may feel like they're a fraud. People may feel like they're unworthy. People may feel like they're not lovable. People won't like me. People won't buy this. It's all those subconscious messages that we tell ourselves, and sometimes we don't even realize we're telling ourselves. And that's why having an outside party have a conversation with us to replay back to us what it is that we're saying to ourselves to help us fix it can be really beneficial.
So as you worked through, in your case, being addicted to work and the perfectionism and feeling like worth came from achieving, did
Right.
you gain any insight into where that came from in your own life, how you developed those beliefs,
Yeah.
or is okay?
Oh yeah, yeah. That's a really easy one now. I was born and raised in the Midwest in the United States, and in the Midwest, one of the typical values that a lot of us have is we're hard workers, and hard work is valued. And if you work hard enough, you can get anything that you want in life. And asking for help is not always as valued. And so that was something that was ingrained in me at a very, very young age. And did my parents, um, they were extremely reasonable people. It was really their message and then my young mind interpreting that message all at the same time. So, for example, they'd say, do your best in school. And my interpretation of that would be, well, then I have to get all A's. It has to be straight A's because that's the best that you could do. And so it's a combination of the things that I heard when I was young and then just my young mind and how that interpreted. And that just continued because when I excelled, I got attention when I was young, right? And that just, that pattern continued until I was an adult. And I actually went through a process in my own mind of divorcing myself from that work hard philosophy. I no longer believe in hard work, and that sounds kind of weird. What I believe in is doing the work in an excellent way, but that it doesn't have to be hard. Because if you are in alignment with what you do, so if your business model, your marketing model, your thinking strategy, your time management strategy, if those are all in alignment with how you think, how you learn, and how you process, then it doesn't have to be hard. And that's the beautiful thing about getting everything into alignment.
So I know that you're kind of answering this, but I still hear myself wanting to say, and I'm sure a lot of people say, but what's wrong with hard work? You should work hard. You should do your best. And if you can get straight A's, you should get straight A's. What's the truth behind that is in that perspective shift?
Sure. So there's a difference between working just to work and working to give results. And for me, working hard meant that before the sun came up, I was working. And after the sun went down, I was working, and everything in between. And the problem with that is that I wasn't living a balanced life. I wasn't living a complete life. I was existing instead of living. And you heard the results of that, right? I mean, I had major health issues, and because I really couldn't participate in life, I started having some relationship issues as well. And that's, we're in business to do a really good job and to serve our clients with amazing, powerful things. but we're not supposed to sacrifice that for the rest of life too. And so it's about finding a way to be able to use all the gifts that you were naturally given in the best way possible that doesn't sacrifice everything else too.
And this kind of goes to the difference between being and doing, getting
Yeah,
value from
right.
who you are and what you bring to the world versus what you can do for people and what you can accomplish and what you can achieve. Right.
Absolutely. I encourage my clients to shift a little bit away from their doing list and actually focus on a being list. We have a transformation quick start is what I call some of the workbooks that we have within my private work. And we have one that's defining you, because a lot of people get so caught up in the doing that they've kind of lost that element of being and who they are. And the real basics of that are to start your day, even before you get out of bed, if you like, deciding who you're going to be. Are you going to be loving? Are you going to be caring? Are you going to be charismatic? Are you going to be angry? Are you going to be pushy? Are you going to be communicative? There's the slews and slews of different adjectives you can choose. But here's the power in that. When you choose who you are going to be in your day, the exact same situation can be interpreted in multiple ways. So, would it be helpful if I gave you an example of how I used that once I got healthy?
Please do.
Okay. So, prior to all this, when I went to face networking meetings, wasn't something that I really enjoyed. In fact, I was known to have said I would have rather get in a root canal than to actually go to the face networking meetings, because I wasn't comfortable. And I shifted and started focusing on who am I choosing to be in my day with my networking. And I chose to be connecting and caring and interested. And so I would go into these networking meetings rather than the focus on, oh, I'm uncomfortable, or who am I going to meet to do A, B, and C. I wanted to be connected and caring and interested. So I'd look for somebody that looked disconnected, somebody that was standing on their own, or maybe had a perplexed look on their face. And I'd reach out to them. I'd say, hi, I'm Stephanie. And I carried myself in a different way because now I was focused on them rather than being focused on me. And the beauty of that is that I built these really fantastic relationships because I chose different ways of being in my day that allowed me to have success in helping other people.
Do you find that business owners have resistance to that? I think a lot of times, I know it was the case for me, and I think a lot of people that I talk to, we kind of think we understand how where we are, and we think we know what our problem is. And so if I have a sales or a marketing or a networking problem, I may not understand you telling me, well, you need to work on your mindset. You need to focus on connecting and being interested in other people. And if my response is just like, no, I have a networking problem. Tell me how to do networking better. Like, do you run into resistance with that?
By the time most of my clients are coming to me, they've had enough pain in their situation. They're like, okay, I'm ready to try something new. So the people that I talk with are what I would call coachable, in that they're willing to try some new things. Now, that being said, before anybody works with me, I'm really clear to say, I'm going to ask you to try some new things. And some of these things are going to seem really weird, and some of these things are going to seem really uncomfortable, but I ask you to give it a shot. And they have to say yes to that. They have to say yes to themselves that I'm going to be willing to try something new, because the reality, we've all heard the phrase, if you always do what you've always done, you're always going to get what you've always got, right? So in order to instigate any kind of change or any kind of transformation, you have to do something new. And that is, most people have to get to a certain level of pain in their situation to be willing to change. But I talked about building a business model that's built around you. One of the things that I decided very early on was that I wasn't going to try to make people do things. It's not enjoyable to make people do things. I want to help people do things. And there's a really big difference between the two. And the person, so that means that the person has to be ready for the work so that it can really be effective. Because otherwise, you're pushing this big boulder up a hill, and I don't have the energy for that, quite frankly. And it's not as effective of a way of working either. And I think the same holds true for people quitting smoking, for people losing weight, for all those things where change is involved.
Do you find that most people coming to you have already started some of their own emotional healing, or does the work that you do frequently lead to that in your clients?
I see it as a 50-50 mix. There are some people that I work with that have done internal work on different things for different reasons. And there are other people that when they talk to me for the first time, it really is the first time that they've ever even approached that idea. But they're open to the possibility. And I think that's the real key. There's going to be some people that just they're not ready, or their philosophy is going to be different, because one of the things that's really important and really critical when you start doing internal work is that you step out of being a victim and you step into being empowered. So rather than blaming, this isn't working because of this, or this isn't working because of that, or my life's not working because of this and this, you're saying, I'm the owner of my life. I take 100% responsibility for the results that I get. And therefore, what can I do to get different results?
So that awareness kind of needs to be step one
Right.
before somebody can come to you and expect to get what they want out of that experience.
Well, and I think those things can happen really quickly. I mean, when you have different conversations with people, there, I mentioned earlier that sometimes when I first start talking to people, they didn't realize that that might be what's going on. But I can ask different questions in the context of the conversation to say, it sounds to me like this, and this is going on. So, for example, the other day I was talking with a woman who mentioned in passing that she was in the process of getting a divorce. And then she went on and talked about what was going on in her business. And the more we talked, the more it became really, really clear that her business problems started happening when her relationship problems started happening. And so I asked her a really simple question of, is it possible that you've lost some confidence in your ability to make decisions as a result of your relationship not going the way that you had originally anticipated it going as a result of this divorce? And she got really quiet and she's like, oh my gosh. And it was just that one question that made the shift for her. And it's different, what that shift is or what that shift looks like is going to be different for everybody, because we all have different life situations that are coming up. But what I found when people are hitting some kind of plateau is it's usually because they've had something that's occurred that's kind of clogged them up, so to speak.
So, what would your advice? I feel like I end up talking to people, and I think this interview speaks to people who are earlier in that journey and trying to build that awareness. So, a question like that can obviously help bring that kind of clarity and awareness. What do you say to people who are not sure where that ends up leading? If they feel like they're frustrated, they want help, they want to improve the situation, but they don't know where to start. Where do you like what would be your first advice to them?
What I would suggest for starters, especially if you think there's a lot of different things that might be going on, is to practice listening to yourself, because we know a lot more than we think we do. And just ask yourself this question: what's the one thing that I'm avoiding doing now that I know if I did it would move my business forward? So, what's the one thing that I'm avoiding doing now that I know if I did it would move my business forward? And whatever that answer is, find somebody that can help you figure out why you're not doing that one thing. And then just take it step by step by step. You don't have to fix it all at once.
So the question to yourself isn't why am I not doing this thing? It's what's one thing that I'm not doing, and then looking for help in figuring out why you're
Right,
not doing it.
right,
That's that's a really good distinction. I like that you're not saying, figure out why you're not doing it. That's kind of the problem, right?
right,
So don't put the horse in front of the, or don't put the cart in front of the horse.
right,
But
right.
start with what you have awareness of. What is it that you're avoiding doing? And then look for the resources that you need that'll help you make sense of
right.
why you're not doing that.
I mean, if you look at my particular story, I wasn't doing things because I did have some mindset stuff going on of that working hard. But I also had stuff like I didn't realize that my over exercising was actually making me more sick. I didn't realize that I had food allergies. So there was some knowledge based things that I didn't have too. And I find that frequently when people have some kind of stuck situation within their business or even within their life, that it is a combination of the two. And so when you have a professional that can help you, a lot of times they're just mirroring what you're telling them, but they can see it a lot easier because they're on the outside.
So there were two things that you had mentioned that I want to come back to. One is the idea of coachability. How do you determine if somebody's coachable or not? And what can people look at in themselves to answer, am I coachable, or to help themselves be more coachable?
Sure. Coachability just essentially means that when someone gives you a suggestion, you're open to that suggestion and you're open to actually trying that suggestion. So really it's really pretty easy when I'm talking to people. If I make a couple suggestions within the initial conversation, no, that can't work because of this and this, no, that can't work because of this and this, and if most of the answers are, well, no, this really can't happen because of this and this, they're probably not ready. You can work with the best coach in the world, but if you're not ready to receive the information, it's not going to hold a lot of value. And I've actually had some people where I've talked to them and said, why do you want to be coached? Are you looking for somebody to argue with, or are you really looking for change? And that sounds harsh. But what's interesting is when I ask that question, it kind of does a reset and they get quiet, and then they can think a little bit more about the answers that they've given. And sometimes it's just not the right time.
And even talking through that, you talked about just maybe not being ready and then being able to be quiet and listen to the answer. So I think in our own lives, we kind of can hear that in our self talk. If we're constantly looking for the reason why things won't work and we're not looking for answers, that's our sign that we're not
Right.
ready yet.
Right, right. And sometimes it's just a moment in time where you make a decision. So when I first started working with that holistic health coach, he made a suggestion about food allergies. And I mentioned I have a number of them, and there's 33. And he made this suggestion about food allergies. And my first gut response was, I don't have food allergies. I was thinking about rashes and hives and that type of thing, and I didn't have any symptoms like that. But I stopped myself in that moment. I listened to that self talk. And I said, Stephanie, you ask your clients to trust you, and you've hired this professional, so give him the same courtesy. And so my verbal response was, well, tell me more. I don't understand that. Help me see that a little better. And so the listening to your own self talk is a really great suggestion.
I had a similar case where I'd hired a coach and just felt so frustrated. Every time I'd go meet with them, I found myself feeling like, well, you don't understand and you're not listening. And the advice that you're giving me doesn't apply. And I had to come up with a phrase to myself that says, don't ask a question, then argue with the answer. There's some,
That's good.
if I trust the person that I'm asking and I think I'm asking the right question and they're where I want to be, then there's something about what they're telling me that I'd misunderstand. So instead of arguing with them, just think about what I need to understand to be able to make sense of that.
Absolutely. Well, I think one thing that you mentioned in there that's really critical to that is you said you trust them. And if you trust them, then that's the absolute right path to take. I think one of the things that I've noticed recently is a number of people that have come to me with background history of this coach didn't work for me or that coach didn't work for me. And what I've found is that they were coachable, but they didn't make the right choice when they hired in the first place. And so what I'd encourage anybody as you go to decide who you want to hire is to really look at not only their sales page, not only their sales conversation, but what business model do they have? What life model do they have? And does that match mine? So, for example, I have a client that I'm working with that previously she had a very negative coaching experience, but it really boiled down to her coach was doing exactly what she said she would do, but it was out of alignment. and she was encouraging my client to do things that made her really uncomfortable, but it wasn't a healthy uncomfortable. It was a this isn't who I am type of uncomfortable. And so she had really made a inaccurate choice in who she hired for a coach. And when I asked her, did you ever have any inklings of that before you hired her? She said, yeah, it felt kind of funny when I decided to hire her. Okay, listen to that. That's that resentment test stuff that I was talking about earlier. If you have, when you're going through a coaching program, you're gonna have uncomfortable moments. That's a part of change. That's a part of transformation. But if it's an uncomfortable feeling of this just doesn't feel right, that's different.
And as you were talking through that idea of trust, I think that's the thing that to me really is at the center of the the problem of that's introduced by emotional trauma in entrepreneurship is that you'll hear stories of a lot of business people, entrepreneurs, who will have a story of, this thing caused a lot of fear. I didn't know how it was going to turn out, but ultimately I knew that I was going to be okay. And so I was able to step into that. And I think the injury of emotional trauma that's unhealed is that you don't have that trust that everything is going to be okay. So it's very difficult to step into that. And it's that same trust that is our gut feeling and our intuition and our judgment of other people and our judgments of ourselves and is our self-value and self-worth and all these things. Does that come up with your coaching, or are
Oh,
you getting people at a different place?
absolutely. No, absolutely. I mean, I think trust is a really big deal. I mean, it even was for me. So after I had gotten so ill that I almost lost my life, I went through this period of how am I going to build a business if I screwed up my life so bad that I almost died? It was self trust, big time self trust going on. And then I got my business model in place, and there were still some things that I wasn't doing because I didn't trust myself to not go back into that overwork mode. I was worried that, okay, I've got a good business model in place. I've got something, I'm working with these clients that I just adore. But if I take this next step, I could get so into it that I could overwork again. And I had that fear going on for quite a while. Now, in my case, I had done a lot of networking and a lot of relationship building. And so I reached out to people that had always given me good advice in the past and asked them to help me through it. And that was a big step for me as well, because prior to that point, I had always been the person that did the helping. I had always been the one that lifted other people up. And because I'm that hard worker, asking for help wasn't something that I was good at. It was a muscle that I had to grow and I had to learn how to use. And now it's one of the best skills that I have. I mean, my business has continued to prosper because of it. But finding a way to trust again it can be a really challenging thing to do. And what I would encourage you to do is start with baby steps. I mean, if everything is feeling overwhelming to you, which it can for some people in certain situations, start with a baby step and then another baby step. For other people, it's not going to be as strong, and maybe there's, trust challenges in specific areas. Well, work on building up the areas that are stronger and build a foundation for yourself so that then you can heal those other areas too.
What were the most valuable resources as you were going through this healing? Like, how did you figure out that you needed to ask for help and that you needed to work on the perfectionism and all the, what guided you in that direction? Oh, do I still have you, Stephanie? Looks like we locked up.
Mike?
Are we back?
I think we are, although it doesn't look like my camera. I'm not sure when I exactly lost you. You went digital and then I didn't hear you.
Uh, all right, let's see. Are we going to get the video back here?
Looks like it's thinking about
Hey,
it.
there we go.
There we go.
All right. So we got disconnected a little bit. My question was, what were the resources that really helped you through this transition during the recovery? during the time where you realized you needed to ask for help, you needed to address the perfectionism and being addicted to work and seeking external value? Like, what guided you through that?
Well, I mentioned that I worked with a holistic health practitioner that
Right.
helped me figure out all of the medical related things that were going on. But he also made some really great mindset suggestions for me as well. And quite honestly, I was in a position where I had to ask for help. I mean, my husband would come home and cook dinner, and my son, who was in second grade at the time, would cut it up like a toddler and help me eat it, because by that point I didn't have enough energy to get off the couch to come to the kitchen and eat. So I was kind of forced into it. I would hope that there's a lot of other people that don't allow themselves to get to that particular situation and can look at their situation and say, okay, this isn't working. What can I do to get myself to a point where it is working? Some of the tools that I used, I did a lot of work using forgiveness of myself. That's actually how I worked through the trust issues that I said I had. I spent a lot of time being quiet with myself and forgiving myself for all of the decisions that I made, and recognizing that I'm human just like everybody else, and I make mistakes, and I learn from those mistakes, and letting it go. Just letting all that extra garbage out and not holding on to it anymore, so that I could be in a more empowered position to move my life and my business forward.
This is what I love about these conversations, because it's so easy for people to see, like, oh, well, you're a successful coach and your business is going the way you want, so of course you're happy and successful and fulfilled. But it really is about all of these mindset things. It's difficult for people to hear that the solution to your business problem is that you need to be more quiet and gentle with yourself and compassionate and forgiving and all these things, because those
Right.
don't feel like business solutions, but they really, really, really are.
Yeah. I mean, I can tell you with my own situation that once I got my business in alignment, so it was really the right structure for what I wanted to do and my values. That's kind of step number one. Because if your foundation is funky, then the house is going to fall down, right? Well, the same holds true for your business. So I got my foundation right, and then I did a lot of internal work. I did a lot of kind of looking at why I made decisions that I did and forgiving those decisions. And then I looked at decisions that I did the reverse of that, though, too. We're so good at being mean to ourselves. Well, you did this wrong and you did that wrong. I also spent a lot of time, and I still do, doing gratitude work of, wow, look at all these things that are really going fantastic in my work. I call that energetic hygiene. We brush our teeth every day and we do other, physical hygiene stuff, but sometimes we let all that extra yuck that comes in just sit and permeate in our mind. And so I work on forgiveness and gratitude every single day. That's just a part of who I am and what I do, and I teach it to my clients as well. But I can tell you that once I got all of that in alignment and I built those habits and I built those patterns, that my business tripled and I worked less. And I'm here to be able to talk about it.
And so this is now 2, 3 years ago, 4 years ago, that you were kind of at the peak of the struggle.
Hmm.
And it's just such a, but the business is growing, clients, social media, coaching, like it's there for
Yeah.
people who are struggling. If you're struggling today, it really is there for you. And it may not be there for you tomorrow, but you can take these steps, you can start moving forward. I
You
love
know,
it.
what's amazing is that, and all of my clients have experienced this as well. And I warn them of it when we first start talking together. And then I warn them when it actually is happening, that at some point they will get an assignment to do nothing. Which, like I said, I generally work with people that are the go, 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 go getter, active, taking inspired action people. And at some point, it's time for them to slow down and stop for a minute. And part of the reason why that's so effective is if you're going 80 miles down the interstate, 80 miles an hour down the interstate, and your GPS isn't turned on, and all of a sudden, your spouse says, "Oh, honey, do we know where we're going?" Well, no. We turn the GPS on and we're like, "Whoops, we're way off track." Well, you may need to stop for a minute, figure out which direction to go, and then change course to actually get to your destination. Stopping isn't necessarily a bad thing. Now, that being said, I'm all about inspired action. We can't just stop. It's about stopping, reassessing, and then taking the right course of action for where you are with the particular circumstances that have come your way.
I love it. I love it. So as we start to wind down in these last few minutes here, what is the most exciting or coolest or most fun topic that's on your mind right now? What do you love talking to people about, or what are you researching, or what's got your attention right now?
There's two things that just get me really excited. One is rebooting sales, and one is visibility. So when I say rebooting sales, I mean there are people that I've been working with that had really fantastic sales in their business at one point, and then all of a sudden stuff just isn't selling quite the same as what they used to have or what they want to have. And it's just been lots and lots of fun to work with those people to help them get their sales back to where they need to be and where they want them to be. And again, that's an internal external thing. It's a combination of the right money mindset and a combination of the right systems and processes in place to be able to communicate, to bring in those leads, and then have a conversation that's authentic so that it turns into a sale.
So somebody needs to reboot their sales. Is that do you have a program or content coming around that, or that's just the thing that's kind of
Yeah, I
got your
actually
attention
have
right now?
I have a private program that's called Money, Mindset, and Magnetism that combines all of that together. So it's the internal work as well as the external work to make sure that all your business systems and processes are in place around the sales aspect of your business, but that also your money mindset is in place as well, where a lot of people find themselves getting stuck or find themselves not getting the results that they want is maybe they have some kind of sales conversation, but there's something going on in the back of their mind that's keeping them from saying things in a way that the prospect is receiving properly. And so we look at all of that from the beginning to the end to help you turn that around.
And so if people want to find out more about that, they go to stephaniecalahan.com.
Right.
Awesome. I'm so glad we got together for this. I know we had some scheduling issues and people were
Yeah.
saying, but we got there. I love it. And we had a good conversation. I feel like it took me a little to get started, to get the right energy behind this, but I'm glad we got there. Anything we need to get out before we close here?
No, the only thing is that I would invite you, if you're interested, to connect with me on one of a number of different social media sites, and you can find that on my website as well, right in the upper right-hand corner, all the different links, Facebook, Google+, LinkedIn, all those good things. I love connecting with new people and meeting new people and helping where I can.
And I've got copies of all those links that I'll include in the show notes as well. So we'll make sure people have the ability to connect with you. Thanks so
Awesome.
much for being with me today, Stephanie.
Thank you. Take care. Have a great day.
Can you hang on for just a second while I sign off here?
Sure.
All right, here we go. Thanks, everyone. Again, as always, my intent is just that you take something away from the interview that helps you in the situation that you're in today. It's not an overnight solution. It's not a quick fix. And what you hear over and over and over again from these guests is that it's a process. And it's a process that starts with very low visibility and ends up with very high visibility. So stick with it until we speak again. Be the person you want to be, build the business you want to build, and have the successful life you want to have.